For years, Barron Trump stood as the silent shadow of a thunderous family legacy, a quiet presence in a world defined by volume, controversy, and relentless attention. But now something has shifted. In a bold move that surprised many, Barron is beginning to step into the light. After years of retreating behind the scenes while his famous family captured headlines, what could possibly inspire him to speak out now? Has he finally found his voice? Or is this the beginning of something far more profound? The time has come, and the world is beginning to watch more closely, to wonder what's next for Donald Trump's youngest son. Barron Trump has always held a quiet fascination. Unlike his older siblings, confident, outspoken, and deeply embedded in the family brand, Barron chose a different path. His presence has been marked by restraint and mystery, an aura of quiet elegance that's rare, especially for someone born into one of the world's most famous families. But before we dive deeper into this unfolding story, if you're enjoying this exploration of the quietest Trump, we'd truly appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button. And if you've just done that, thank you. Now, let's return to the heart of the story. While the rest of the Trump family flourished under the glaring lights of public life, Barron remained an enigma, deliberately distant. His early years were unusually private, calm, even serene, a stark contrast to the high-profile upbringings of Ivanka, Don Jr., and Eric. Though he lived in symbolic places like Trump Tower and the White House, Barron never courted attention. Unlike his siblings who were photographed at political rallies, business summits, or magazine covers, Barron preferred the shadows. When he did appear in public, he often stood apart, his expressions guarded, distant, unreadable. These rare glimpses only deepened the mystery. Was he simply introverted, or did his silence conceal something more meaningful? Was it personality or protection? Many believe that his mother, Melania Trump, played a pivotal role in shielding him from the chaos of celebrity. Known for her fierce protectiveness, Melania worked tirelessly to give Barron something few children of presidents ever receive: a normal childhood. Even during her time as First Lady, she placed Barron's privacy above all else, carefully guarding his space from the media frenzy surrounding the Trump name. Unlike his siblings who eagerly embraced the family empire, be it through business ventures or political campaigns, Barron remained largely absent from the public eye. Some argue it's due to his natural introversion, a trait that not everyone expects from someone born into such spotlight. Because for Barron, fame wasn't a pursuit. It was a constant echo he never asked for. The Trump name may carry weight, but for Barron, it may no longer carry appeal. Perhaps what he truly desires is a quieter existence, one where he can focus on his own passions, far removed from the spotlight or anyone's expectations. Even in his silence, people remain captivated by him. And now, with recent developments, Barron's presence is more compelling than ever. Because when someone who rarely speaks makes a move, everyone notices. Observers have begun to scrutinize the subtlest things: his facial expressions, his posture, the way he interacts with his family. They search for meaning in what he doesn't say, looking for insight into who he truly is. His quiet nature stands in stark contrast to his outspoken siblings, whose voices have dominated headlines and political discourse. Barron's name, ironically, stands out precisely because he hasn't spoken much at all. In a world addicted to noise, Barron remains a calming mystery, an island of stillness in the storm that is the Trump family, and that mystery has become his identity. How does someone raised in silence, under constant watch, decide to step forward and reshape their place in the narrative? Why now? Why would Barron Trump choose this moment to finally speak out? Everything changed the moment he turned 18. Overnight, the world no longer saw him as the youngest child in a famous family, but as a legal adult, carrying the weight of new responsibilities, scrutiny, and expectations. For Barron, this milestone wasn't just a number. It marked the end of innocence in the public eye. Turning 18 is a big deal for anyone, but for the youngest Trump, it came with added pressure. Every action, every word, or even silence is now dissected, interpreted, and discussed. When he was younger, his silence could be excused, chalked up to youth, shyness, or a lack of understanding. But now, those excuses no longer apply. He had to decide who he wanted to be in the eyes of the public. Barron Trump was no longer just the quiet youngest child of a controversial president. He was now an adult, stepping into a world that had watched his every move in silence. The dynamics of his family may have heavily influenced his ultimate decision. After all, the Trump family is known for its outspoken nature. Eric, Donald Jr., and Ivanka had been deeply engaged in their father's business and political ventures for years. But Barron had always been the different one, the silent observer in a family that thrived on attention and spectacle. As he matured, the distance between him and his siblings may have become more pronounced. With every passing year, it became more obvious that Barron wasn't being groomed for the same public-facing roles. Perhaps his family hoped he'd eventually take a stand or carry on a legacy, or maybe he felt internal pressure to speak up, to break the silence not only for himself but for the sake of defining his place. However, family expectations weren't the only forces at play. The outside world was also shifting rapidly, politically and socially. And yet, the Trump name remained a lightning rod in the headlines. Those external pressures may have pushed Barron toward this pivotal moment. He may have felt compelled to speak on a public issue, a political event, or a personal experience tied to the broader conversations swirling around him. What's fascinating is that this moment didn't just come out of nowhere. Over the past year, Barron had made more public appearances, and with each one he appeared more composed, more recognized. His demeanor began to shift. Subtle gestures, casual interactions, even the way he stood near his parents. Cameras caught it all. It was as if he were preparing himself step by step to emerge from the shadows. So when Barron finally spoke, it didn't feel sudden. It felt inevitable. It felt like the culmination of years of silence, years of absorbing everything around him. Now he realized he had a voice, and it was time to use it. This wasn't just a passing moment for Barron Trump. It was a turning point, a crossroads in his search for identity in a world that had long expected him to remain silent. And then he made a statement, short but deeply impactful. People listened. They were surprised by the clarity, the strength of his voice. There was no ambiguity, no carefully crafted vagueness. His words were clear, deliberate. And it wasn't just what he said. It was the fact that he said anything at all. Every major media outlet jumped in. Analysts broke down each word, each phrase, trying to interpret its deeper meaning. Social media exploded. Admiration, curiosity, skepticism, even shock. The reactions varied, but they all had one thing in common. People were paying attention. For a young man who had been a ghost in plain sight, Barron's first real public statement was like a lightning bolt. A young man long overshadowed by the towering presence of his father finally stepped into the light. To some, it felt like a breath of fresh air, a coming-of-age moment where a boy became his own man. To others, it was seen as a challenge, even a betrayal, of the traditional values and tightly woven alliances that had defined the Trump family legacy for decades. But no matter how the world chose to interpret it, one thing was clear. Barron Trump's voice, once barely a whisper, had become impossible to ignore. For years, he had remained a silent observer, standing quietly at the edges of history. Now that silence had been shattered. Loud, clear, deliberate. And so, the questions began to swirl. Was this a declaration of belief, a personal awakening? Or was it perhaps an act of rebellion against the carefully curated image that had always surrounded his family? Had Barron simply decided that it was finally time to speak for himself? Or was he trying to carve out an identity entirely separate from the towering legacy of Donald Trump? Given the timing, it could very well be both. Turning 18 is more than just a birthday. It's a moment of reckoning, of freedom, of new responsibilities. For Barron, it may have been the perfect storm, a personal milestone colliding with an urgent need to define who he truly is. Yet what stood out most wasn't just the fact that he spoke, but how he spoke. Every word chosen with care, every sentence carrying weight. It didn't feel like a message to the world. It felt like a message to his family, to his father, perhaps even to himself. A quiet declaration wrapped in civility, but fueled by emotion. And how did the family respond? With silence, deafening silence. No official statements, No Twitter posts, no rebuttals. Just a cold, vast pause that made everything feel even more uncertain. Behind those closed doors, what conversations were being had? Did his siblings view him as brave or reckless? Would his father see this as disloyalty or independence? Was there tension, disappointment, or quiet pride? Those who know the inner workings of the Trump family whispered 1,000 theories, each more intriguing than the last. The public, meanwhile, was left guessing, left watching, left wondering. In the days that followed, the media erupted. Headlines blazed across screens. Talk show hosts debated. Bloggers speculated. Influencers picked apart every word, every pause, every punctuation mark. Was this the moment? A defining pivot in the story of America's most talked about family? Was the power dynamic within the Trump household shifting before our eyes? Barron, once the quiet shadow, had become the subject of global fascination. For years, the world had wondered, what does Barron Trump really believe in? What kind of man is he becoming? How does he see the world around him? Now, with just a few carefully spoken words, he had answered, and yet sparked 1,000 more questions. What happens when the quietest member of a powerful dynasty finally finds his voice? Can that single act shift everything we thought we knew? Perhaps only now, as Barron Trump begins to speak, does the world truly begin to listen. Understanding the quiet nature of Barron Trump requires more than a surface glance. His silence over the years wasn't just a phase, it was formative. It shaped him. It defined how he would navigate a world that constantly watched his every move. In a family known for bold statements and louder-than-life personalities, Barron chose a different path. A path of stillness, of observation, of quiet self-construction. His recent public statement wasn't just a comment, it was a seismic event within the Trump family dynamic. It wasn't loud, it wasn't long, but it was enough. Enough to shift the air around them, enough to make people stop and ask, what just happened? It seemed to signal more than just an opinion. It was a shift in power, a turning point, a private rebellion that echoed beyond the walls of their gilded life. Behind closed doors, the tension reportedly surged. The family that once functioned as a unified front now faced a crack, subtle but impossible to ignore. The world saw silence, but those who knew the rhythms of the Trump household could sense it. Barron's voice had triggered something, a pause, a recalibration, a new reality. Growing up in a family that's constantly in the limelight is a burden few can understand. Barron lived most of his life on the periphery, present but quiet, watching, learning. And when he finally chose to speak, the world wasn't ready. Was it a personal awakening, a plea after years of silence, or a bold strike of defiance? Whatever it was, the ripple effects were immediate. Had Donald Trump been present in that moment, perhaps he might have seen it as a challenge. He has always been the guardian of the Trump image, the architect of the family's narrative. Barron's words came at a time when the former president remains an omnipresent figure, carefully curating the Trump legacy. This was not a coordinated move. This was a surprise, and that made it even more powerful. So does Donald see this as a threat? Or perhaps, deep down, a sign that his youngest son is finally stepping into his own? Maybe both. What's undeniable is this. Barron's voice, though calm and deliberate, has cut through the noise. It has reframed how the public sees not just him, but the entire Trump family. The legacy has shifted. The narrative is no longer one-dimensional. And as the cameras turn, as the world leans in closer, one question lingers louder than all others. What happens when the quietest Trump starts speaking? Does the world finally begin to understand? Or does everything we've known start to unravel? The confidence, or the concern about the consequences of his words remains uncertain. What's clear, however, is that the level of tension within the Trump family may now hinge on how Barron's older siblings respond. Ivanka, Donald Jr., and Eric have long been public figures, closely involved in the family business and political narrative. The future of their familial relationships could depend on how they interpret Barron's bold remarks. Will they see his statement that thus a sign of emotional maturity, or as a threat to the family's unity? The Trump name carries immense weight. Their public image has always been more than personal. It's been a symbol, a brand. From Donald's real estate empire to his presidency, success has largely rested on projecting a unified front. But now, with Barron's comments rippling through the media, that carefully curated image faces both the opportunity to evolve and the risk of fracturing. How will people remember Barron's moment of truth? Will he be seen as brave, standing for authenticity and independence, or as someone who challenged family tradition too publicly? Only time will reveal how the Trump family and Barron himself will navigate this new and uncertain chapter. What happens when the quietest Trump finally breaks his silence? Can Barron's bold move reshape the family's future? One defining question remains: is this a permanent shift in how Barron expresses himself, or just a fleeting moment of rebellion? For most of his life, he was nearly invisible, a shadow behind the headlines as his family thrived in the spotlight. But now his direct words reveal a readiness to stand out, even if it changes how the world and his own family see him. Is this the beginning of a new path for Barron? Many are asking what comes next. Will he follow in his father's political footsteps, or carve out a life far away from the feverish media cycle? Despite being born into the deeply rooted Trump legacy, Barron holds a unique chance to break away from the expectations that once shaped his father's rise. Will he choose a quieter, more private existence, or continue the Trump dynasty in his own way? His decision to speak out reflects a broader shift seen among younger generations today. A desire to challenge old rules and assert more individuality and independence than ever before. Understanding the deeply quiet nature of Barron Trump reveals just how profoundly his silence has shaped him. Those silent years were not just a phase, they molded him into who he is today. During that time, he deliberately stayed away from chaos to build his own identity within a family known for being outspoken and bold. Barron's recent declarations sent shockwaves through the Trump family. It wasn't just a remark, it marked a pivotal moment that shifted family dynamics and the way they functioned together. This unexpected move didn't just surprise the public, it ignited tension behind closed doors. His words appeared to trigger a shift in the family's behavior. Growing up in such a famous family is a challenge, and Barron has spent most of his life away from the spotlight. But once he found his voice, people began to question what was really going on. Was this a personal call, a reaction to years of silence, or a bold act of rebellion? Whatever the motivation, the family immediately felt the ripple effects. If Donald Trump had been present, he might have seen the situation very differently. As a prominent figure who carefully curates his family's image, the former president has always controlled the narrative around their lives. Barron's statement, delivered at a critical time, could be viewed as a challenge to that control. Does Donald see it as a threat to his power or a sign of Barron's newfound independence? Maybe both. Barron's voice is now clear and unmistakable, even if it shifts the way the world sees their family. Whether Donald Trump embraces his son's growth or fears the consequences remains uncertain. The level of division within the family may also hinge on the reactions of Barron's older siblings. Ivanka, Donald Jr., and Eric have long been public figures and actively involved in the family's business. The future of their relationships may depend on how they interpret Barron's comments. With the youngest family member suddenly telling a different story, will they see it as a sign of maturity or feel threatened? The Trump name carries immense weight. Their public image has always been part of a larger narrative, from Donald's business empire to his presidency. Their success has largely depended on presenting a unified front. Now, with Barron's remarks making waves, the image they've worked so hard to build could be enhanced or fractured. How will people remember Barron's actions? Will they see him as brave for standing up for his freedom, or rebellious for challenging tradition? Only time will reveal how the Trump family and Barron himself navigate this new chapter. What happens when the quietest Trump finally breaks his silence? Could Barron's bold move redefine the family's future? A dominant question remains. Is this a permanent shift in how he expresses himself? For most of his life, Barron remained nearly invisible while his family thrived in the public eye. His blunt comment made it clear he's ready to stand out, even if it changes how his family and the world see him. Could this be the beginning of a new path for Barron? Many are wondering what comes next. Will he follow his father's political footsteps? Or will he try to escape the media frenzy and create a completely different life? Despite the Trump name being deeply rooted in American politics, Barron has a unique chance to carve his own path, one that breaks free from the rigid expectations that shaped his father's journey. Will he choose a quieter, more private life, or carry on the family legacy? Barron's decision to speak out reflects a broader trend among today's youth, challenging old rules and striving for independence and identity more than ever. His recent actions appear to reflect a deep yearning to carve out his own identity, a quiet rebellion against the massive shadow cast by his iconic family name. It's a moment that forces us to pause and consider that even those born into unimaginable privilege and influence eventually confront a very personal question. What does the future truly mean to me? For Barron Trump, this could very well be the genesis of an entirely new chapter. A chapter where his voice, once faint, barely a whisper behind closed doors, has suddenly become undeniable, loud, and meaningful. For so long, he was just a silent presence at public events, the tall figure standing behind his parents, almost an observer in his own life. But now the world has heard him, and nothing will ever be quite the same again. Could this be the pivotal moment when Barron begins to discover his true self, redefining how both his family and the world perceive him? Will he continue to speak up for what he believes in, taking the first steps toward becoming a voice of a new generation? Or will he quietly retreat, returning to the peaceful anonymity he's long seemed to prefer? Opinions are as divided as they are passionate. Some feel inspired, others unsettled, but nearly everyone is watching. After years of near total silence, this single sharp moment of expression has raised a tidal wave of curiosity. Could this be a singular outburst, or the beginning of a new, more public role? One thing is certain, the world is watching and waiting. Will Barron issue more public comments following this bold declaration, or will he once again disappear into the background? It's impossible to say for sure. Having spent most of his life behind the curtain, Barron now stands at a crossroads. He might step forward, fully embracing the spotlight that once eluded him, or he might choose to walk back into the quiet world where his name speaks louder than his words. Yet, regardless of what lies ahead, one truth remains clear. This could be the beginning of an entirely new narrative, one where Barron isn't just the youngest Trump, but a man in his own right. A man whose choices could shift not just his own legacy, but the legacy of an entire family known for its indelible imprint on American life. He's cracked the door open to new possibilities. Possibilities that may lead to transformation, rebellion, or a reimagining of what it means to be a Trump in today's world. Only time will tell where these choices will take him, but one thing is undeniable. Barron Trump has arrived, not as a footnote, but as a chapter all his own. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, share it with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more incredible stories. Tap on the next video on the screen right now to continue this journey. Thank you again for your support.